Hello and welcome. Hello, everyone. Joining today's session with Kate Ochsman, who's here with me. Let me introduce her. She's an international wildlife photographer and conservationist. She's currently based in Montana and working a lot in Yellowstone, which she will tell us a lot about. And today's topic is about bringing conservation to the home front. So Kate has a background working in Africa and then went back to the States to work there and can talk about the differences on the two continents. So Kate, welcome. Thank you for joining. It's great
Yeah,
to have you.
thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be here. Thank you for everyone, and hello to everyone who's here. Thank you for joining. I look forward to any questions you might have. Um, yeah, I'm excited to talk about the differences and about Yellowstone because it's a very special place.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear all about that. Kate, maybe to kick things off, it
Hmm.
would be nice to get a bit of your background story, which is really intriguing and interesting. I think you said yourself it's brought you full circle. So you come from America. You were born in the States in Washington D.C., if I'm not mistaken. You said your backyard was
Yeah.
your the way to nature for you basically, where you started everything, and you
Yeah.
went. Yeah, go ahead, go ahead,
Well,
jump right in.
I could talk for forever, like many storytellers. So just keep me on track. I did make a little PowerPoint with some fun photos. If I can jump into that, is that okay?
Please, yeah, feel free to share and go
Okay.
ahead.
So yeah, bear with me as I navigate technology. I'm going to share my screen. And okay, perfect. Okay, so you all can see me and the screen, right?
Yep, we can.
Okay.
And everyone, please feel free to leave any questions in the chat window. Thank you for already telling us where you're all from. I see people joining from Germany, from Austria, from Paris, from Belgium, from Florida. So it's lovely having you. Feel free
Awesome.
to put your questions in there, and I'll ask Kate in the meantime.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Um, Okay, so as Marion spoke about, the topic is Africa and America and back again, because now the world has opened up and I'm able to go back to Africa, which is so, so wonderful. My heart is so happy. The photo on with the rhinos is me doing work with one of the organizations I work with, which I'll talk about, called Youth for African Wildlife. And we basically support this rhino orphanage in South Africa. And so we get to go hang out with the orphans sometimes and film and help out and clean up. It's really nice. And then the other photo is me out in the field, the interior in Yellowstone during, let's see, a -8 degree Fahrenheit or -10 degree Fahrenheit winter day, trying to photograph frosty bison by geothermal features, which is what we'll talk about later. So basically, where I got my start, um, in let's see, in after college, I went to college for marketing, so nothing related to art or wildlife or conservation. Went to college in Texas, and then I made my way out to Los Angeles pursuing film. I wanted to be an actor, which, funny enough, is something that a lot of people I've spoken to who go into guiding have like a history in theater, which is interesting. But so I moved out to LA, and while I was there, I started volunteering weekly at an exotic and wild animal sanctuary called the Wildlife Way Station. So that's when I first started really working with wildlife and learning about different conservation issues around the world. And so you can see me there on Christmas with Tangasi, who is a beautiful lion, who I got to see grow up into an adult, which was amazing. And then I was also a goat handler. So I was on the goat team. So that's me and Basil. And we were presenting at a fair and educating. So I started working at different I went to like a wrestling match educating about wildlife, different fairs and things like that, just trying to get involved and talk about conservation. And then in 2014, I got an opportunity. I heard about this internship in South Africa called Youth for African Wildlife, which was the photo with the baby rhinos earlier, and it blended all my loves in a way that I didn't know existed. So wildlife conservation, documentary filmmaking, and photography. And so it was actually on this internship. I heard about it. Let's see. I heard about it, and 9 weeks later, I was there. I found it, and I was like, "This is the perfect opportunity for me. I want to go. I've never been to anywhere in Africa. I really would love to try it." So, yeah, it totally changed my life. I got to actually learn about photography. That's where I actually learned how to use my DSLR camera, because I had gotten one before for acting and portraiture and things like that. But I got to learn how to use manual settings and not just be on automatic, and learn about wildlife. So we made a short film when I was there about the rhino poaching crisis, and this is 2014, and one man who was rescuing lots of calves, which is why we got to go to the orphanage and tell about their stories. And then we got to participate in, at that time, which was a rhino. It wasn't dehorning. They weren't dehorning yet. It's a white rhino. It was the microchipping. So putting like a little chip in both of the horns and then behind the ears, so that when the rhino got poached, and if they were able to find, the carcass and then eventually the horn somewhere in transit along its path, you could link the horn to the crime and hold someone accountable. So anyways, so that internship changed my life. And then I had to go back to LA, figure out how to make this work. So where I think this is a little bit relevant for people at home is, how do you get involved with the issues you care about when you live abroad? And I tried different things when I was in LA. So one of the photos is I participated in, at this point, we had the marches for elephants and rhinos, the marches for like global marches, if you remember those, for elephants and rhinos, global march for lions and canned hunting. So I participated in those protests. And then also in 2016, I went back to South Africa with Youth for African Wildlife, and I went to CITES. So I got to understand or educate there and lobby a little bit, but then also understand a little bit the dynamics between different nonprofits who want similar things but want different things, and how to try to work together to get your desires across to protect different species. So that photo, it's actually two of the black mambas, and then Dex Kotze, who is the founder of Youth for African Wildlife and one of my good friends and still my boss over there. But then I was so unhappy going back to LA. My heart and my soul and my mind were at such odds, because, changing one's life is a really big, scary thing. And so I just started looking on the internet of ways that I could get back to South Africa and get involved. And I found Eco Training, which is a safari guide school. Yes, safari guide school is a real thing, and it's so much fun. It's like adult summer camp in the bush, in tents, and your 16 best friends and wildlife. So I enrolled in a year-long eco training course. So I became, what do you call it, like a driving safari guide, and then also what you see there is a backup safari guide, and you need to learn how to do rifles when how to shoot with rifles when you're walking in the bush. So that's why I have a rifle. I'm not big into shooting, but it's good to know how to. So I became a safari guide, which was amazing. And then I also worked at ERA, which is Elephant Human Relations Aid in Namibia, which does human wildlife coexistence with the desert adapted elephants and local farmers in Damaraland in Namibia. So what it does is, you can see, this is the complete one of the walls around this water tank. So basically the issue there is elephants need lots of water, and it's a desert, so there's not very much. So they go to these water points that these farmers have for their cattle and goats, tip them over, drink the water, and then the farmers want them dead. And so to help with that conflict, volunteers come for these 2-week programs throughout the year and build these walls around the water tanks. So you're lifting granite rocks, you're mixing cement in wheelbarrows, you're not showering for a week, you're like sleeping on a mat on the ground where you can hear hyena. I mean, it's cool. It's hard work, and it's amazing, and it makes a huge difference. So those were some of the things I got to do. I got to do media for the school I went to for safari guide training, and then I did freelancing for a year while I figured out, how am I going to get to South Africa? So basically, I was working also with Youth for African Wildlife and running their internship programs for basically bringing global interns around the world and teaching them what I learned: film photography, and conservation issues, and how to make a difference through storytelling. And so I actually was able to get my 3-year visa to move to South Africa in March of 2020. And
How
yeah,
ironic.
It's perfect. It's so perfect. But so I got my visa to move, and I decided I had been taking online. Um, yeah, I think I got it on like March 12th or something. And then while I was waiting for my visa, because it's a long process, it's a lot of paperwork, while I was waiting for it to come through, hoping it would, I was taking online David Yarrow's Master of Photography course, which is like a 54 video course on photography. And he talked a lot about bison in Yellowstone. And that's something he shoots regularly. So I thought to myself, well, I'd never been to Yellowstone. It's the oldest national park in the entire world. Kruger, my beloved Kruger, was based off of it. Like, let me go check out Yellowstone before I permanently move to Africa. Um, so I got my visa, and I started driving up from Los Angeles up to Yellowstone. And en route, I got this message from a bunch of friends saying, "Oh my gosh, are you okay? Are you okay?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine. Why? This is great." They're like, "Did you hear the news?" So COVID shut everything down. My visa was revoked, of course, and I had been living out of the country for 2 years. Like, I had my dog with me. I was like, what am I gonna do? I've got a rental car, my camera gear, a week's worth of clothing. Like, am I gonna go live with my mom in DC? I love my mom, but I don't want to go do that. So um, I just carried on up to Yellowstone because I'd already, paid for a week of accommodation. So yeah, my very first day, and because I wanted to see bison, and so I thought they were cool animals. So, anyways, so the first photo, you've got my dog, who's now no longer with us, but she got to live in a wild area. She actually had her South African visa before I did, her paperwork. But she got to see bison. And so that was our first like entry into the park. And you can see the little arch of the park in the mirror, the rear view mirror there, which is cool. It's the original entrance to Yellowstone. And then obviously meet a bison. I was very excited. And then one of my first photos of a bison, which I actually also have on my wall. Oh, I don't think maybe you can see. And I was just really excited and proud. And I didn't understand, or I didn't even know that American wildlife existed in this way, in the same way that I experienced it in South Africa. And it was just this whole new world opened up to me. And I was so proud because it was in my home country. And I finally found a place where I could be around big wildlife. Um, so then I ended up staying in Yellowstone. I ended up making a home here. So I've been here now for two plus years. And I could have gone back to South Africa, but I really have enjoyed getting to know the people here, the small communities, the wildlife. So I've gotten the opportunity to co-guide up in Alaska with bears and katmai, which coolest thing ever. The bighorn sheep are one of my favorite things. I host photo workshops exclusively on them in the fall when they're in their rut. So I've gotten to just learn a lot and be a part of conservation in my own country. So I think that's the end of my kind of what I'm doing now. So yeah, what I'm doing now is just my own photography, teaching photography and guiding. And now the world is opening up. So getting to travel abroad. I just got back from the Pontanel guiding. So it's amazing. It's amazing. And
An
this wouldn't have.
incredible story, Kate. Sorry,
Thank you.
didn't want to interrupt you, but I think looking at all of this, there's definitely many questions. We already have some questions already
Oh,
in the
cool.
chat as well, which I think we should get to. So one of them would be from Ishita, who asked what the current situation is with wolves in Yellowstone. There has been a huge international outcry and about hunting recently. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that. I think before we go to the bisons, is that fine?
Yeah, I love you for asking that question because that's something I really wanted to speak about. So thank you so much. I'm actually going to end the slideshow if that's okay. I can go back to it. I'm going to end the share screen just so I can see you again. So I'm talking to a person and not to my slideshow. Well, yeah, thank you for asking. So the situation with wolves. So a little bit, I'll just give a little of the history if that's okay, just kind of up to what's happening now. So basically wolves were extirpated from the lower 48 in the US in 1926. So that was the last wolf killed in Yellowstone by park rangers in 1926 they killed all the predators because they wanted to make it safe for visitation for people. And they didn't understand, ecosystems at that time. So there's a small little population left in Minnesota, but other than that, wolves were gone. And in 1995, what we found in Yellowstone was a park and an ecosystem devastated and completely overrun by elk, overgrazed, and it was just an unhealthy ecosystem. So that was the scientific argument for bringing wolves back. And so in 1995 and 96, they did 2 years bringing back wolves to Yellowstone and to a little forest in Idaho. And in Yellowstone, they did something called a soft release because they really wanted the animals to maintain, like stay in Yellowstone, make territories, breed, hunt, all those things. So they put them in these little groups, either captured family groups from Canada, which are the same wolves because it's the Rocky Mountains that snake their way up. So they're Rocky Mountain wolves, the same thing we have here and had here. So put them in pens and then kind of fed them carcasses for the first 6 weeks and then released them into the park. And it worked so well. So from those original 40 something wolves from the 2 years, they established territories and increased in numbers very quickly, which was amazing. They took to elk hunting and we found that the landscape became so much healthier. I'm sure you guys have seen, like, when they say the wolves changed the river systems. Reason being is because the elk now had to like watch their back because they didn't want to like stay in big flats where wolves can, because wolves are what do you call it? They're not ambush hunters. They're, I can't think of the word now. They run and chase. You know, they don't sneak and hide like a cat. They run their food down. So they have to be in big fields where they can tire out the elk and capture it. So basically in these big open areas along the rivers, the elk couldn't just freely graze, and that allowed aspens and willows and all these other plants to regrow. And when you start bringing back these things, you bring back the things that eat them. So beavers came back. And so beavers obviously are huge engineers and architects of spaces. And so they changed the rivers and the ponds, and insects could be reborn, fish could be reborn. So it was this amazing resurrection of what was an original ecosystem, all because of the wolves. So anyways, thank you for listening to that.
No, super interesting.
And how that translates to now is that, so you've got these, Yellowstone itself is this national park protected area, mostly in Wyoming, a little bit in Montana, and then just a smidgen in Idaho. And the populations of wolves definitely left, and what they were supposed to do started going to other parts, during dispersal, when the young ones go out looking for mates and territories. And the populations are very great and healthy and keeping the elk populations in check. But wolves are, enemy number one in some of these parts. And there's a number of reasons. There's legitimate reasons with conflict with cattle, and there's a lot of ranch country here, and ranchers actually serve a huge environmental benefit by protecting vast swaths of land in the West that otherwise would be subdivided for, strip malls and massage envies and all those types of things. So they do amazing work, but also, like anywhere else, they want to protect their cattle and their investment and their money. So that's one part of the story. The other part is the West, as I was telling Marion earlier, has a mentality of total freedom. People who live here, it's a very different way of life than DC, where I come from, the capital, who makes all the rules. Mm-hmm. So people here don't want to be told how to live their life or what to do. And when the wolves were brought in, it wasn't their choice. They didn't have a say. And they felt like the government was just infringing upon them and their way of life and their traditions. And so a lot of the attitudes and negative attitudes towards wolves come from that. And then with that come a lot of, how do I say this in a nice way? A lot of stories, tall tales about wolves that just simply aren't true. That they're the wrong wolves. They're too big. They're, so they're killing all the elk. There's no elk left. Like, there's just all these non-scientific, not true stories going around in the community that, you just have to kind of listen to. But so how that translates now that we have a very conservative governor in Montana, who pretty much as soon as he got in, and he appoints people to positions like in charge of fish and wildlife and different things like that. we don't vote on them. And so he appointed lots of conservative people who don't like wolves and other things. So basically what they kind of slid in last year was that from 8 to 1,200 wolves in the state of Montana, hunting would be able to bring that number down to 150 animals across the entire state. And I think Montana, I could be wrong, but Montana's like the size of Japan. It's something, Montana's massive. And to also put in perspective, wolf packs are family groups and they average about 10 animals in a pack. So 150 animals is 15 packs across an entire state. So there was a horrible, what's the word? Just killing off of wolves everywhere in Montana over this past year. So the part that we're really trying to fight for here in Gardner, because I live at the northwest corner of Yellowstone, is protecting the park wolves, like basically having some type of buffer zone outside of the park, which they've always had. There's these 2 hunting zones north of the park. And last year, like normally you could have 1 animal killed in each of these kind of buffer zones. But last year they would only stop the hunting when there were 80 animals killed in these two zones. And that killed, actually, because of that, 25% of the park wolves who have been studied, who are invaluable to research, were killed. And that also, when you kill a wolf, you don't know who you're killing. You kill an alpha, which is mom or dad, the whole pack disbands. So it's bad. So that's the current status. I'm a part of our business is a part of a organization here, nonprofit called Wild Livelihoods, which I've attached the link to at the back. And we are basically going off of the model, how this relates to Africa or all over, the mentality of if it pays, it stays. So these wolves bring in a lot of tourism and a lot of ecotourism and a lot of money from that. And so we're using the argument that our livelihoods are based on having wolves and other wildlife.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
so it's complicated. That's the relationship status on Facebook. It's complicated.
It's very complicated. I hope that was, please ask questions. That was a
No,
lot of
it's
information.
really
It's a complex
interesting.
topic.
Yeah, no, but I think it maybe ties into what we discussed ahead of our live talk, that we would talk a bit about the difference between how conservation is managed in Africa versus America. Because you said already a little bit that, it came from the government, it comes from the top, from Washington, from some, anonymous group of people that you don't really relate to on the other side of the state, of the continent, basically. And as opposed to a participative model where communities are involved in conservation, get to make the decisions on their own, are really active parts of conservation, which comes down to land use, comes down to how land is managed. So maybe tell us a bit about what you learned in seeing these differences between Africa and America.
Well, I think, let's see, how do I put this? There's a lot of similarities and a lot of differences. One of the biggest differences is the type of land. So in America, a lot of it is public land. So in the park, you've got the national park, which is completely protected. You've got the national forest, which is a little looser, allows hunting, and things like that. And you've got BLM, Bureau of Land Management. So all these are public lands that when you want to do things on them or with them, it's all done legally. So it's all done through legislation. And also, I think one of the biggest differences in the States is that as compared to parts of, let's say, rural Africa, is that the poverty levels are very different. And there's plenty of people struggling around here, but it's in a different way. And also, because of having public lands here, for example, people are allowed to hunt. So, for example, if you want to buy an elk tag in Montana to feed your family for a year, it's, I don't know, $20 or something to buy an elk tag, and you have to do it all, but you can feed your family on these public lands at a price. So that, I think, also creates more harmony within people with the lands. In terms of getting things done and accomplished in terms of a conservation standpoint, it's all done through the legislation and law, which is kind of, for me, it's over my head. I'm not interested in it. I find it boring. I find it really frustrating. It takes a long time. Whereas in Africa, I feel like my experience is there's a lot of things happening at the grassroots that you can, in ways that you can really help and empower local people. And I feel like I can see my difference or my impact a lot more strongly than I can here. Because you can make like an everyday small difference there, whereas here it'll take months and lots of fighting and social media, and it's not as emotionally satisfying.
I understand. And I think also this is a very complicated topic. I don't think we have to dive too deep into like political issues. People would maybe also stop
Yeah.
listening at some point. But what would be interesting is to talk a bit about your experiences now in Yellowstone, how conservation is working, how it's tightly related also to tourism. I know you own a company that does photographic tours in Yellowstone as well and internationally. And
Yeah.
the same goes for Africa. In many places, tourism is very tightly linked to conservation. So that is something maybe that unites both continents in a way. So how does it work in Yellowstone? What's it like? We have some tourism related questions in the chat as well, like what's the best
Okay.
month to visit?
Okay, cool.
Silke has said she has enjoyed Yellowstone already in winter a few years ago. It was so peaceful and really amazing. So I
Yeah.
think you know a lot about that, and you also like winter a lot. So tell us a bit about that tourism angle of things.
Yeah, well, what's interesting is, so in terms of conservation, because it's a national park system, um, it doesn't really need us. I mean, yes, it does. And our park fees, I think, should increase a lot. I think it's insane that in the U.S. and I mean, this is part of the public lands to make them accessible to everyone. I understand that, but I have an annual pass to all the national parks in our country for $80 a year. It's
It's
nothing.
nothing. Yeah,
And
that's not.
the parks need so much more money to, because they're getting overrun with people. More people want to go, and which is amazing. They just need more help for infrastructure, maintaining roads, toilets, all those things. But anyway, so what's neat about our national park system is they exist, I think, kind of without us. They have a right to exist because of the fact that they were created 100 years ago. And so we've built up economies around that. So it's interesting, whereas in Africa it felt very different because how do you say this? It was kind of this feels inside out versus that felt outside in. So the land here, we're people who have industry around the parks. We're here because we love living here. We love the lifestyle. We appreciate it. We want to protect it, but we're financially benefiting from the park, which is also why some of our money goes to the park at the end of the year from the income we make. But I felt like in places in Africa, in order to maintain wild places and protect a place, you had to empower local communities. People who live in the villages will work at the lodges or in tourism. So it's a different approach.
Mhm.
Did
Yeah.
I make that clear at all?
Yeah, I think it's
Okay.
also what is widely criticized in many places, that it's as you said, it's coming more from the outside in versus really coming as grassroots levels from communities. But I think this might also be changing. I think communities get to learn a lot about how their natural places actually can benefit them, and that's some of the work that African Parks is doing in a very as I said, in a very holistic way, where they really include the communities and include them also on board level in the African parks, managed
Cool.
boards of all the parks. So they get to have a say, right? And then it makes it much more sustainable, not just ecologically, but also economically over a longer period of time, because people are involved for the long run. It's not just a term, right? Like a period of
Yes.
being governor for, I don't know how many years it is in Montana, 4 years, 5 years, I don't know.
Yeah.
We're gone again. For the communities, it's different, of course. It's their land, they live there. They have a vested interest in keeping it up for a long period of time. And the same goes for African parks. They go into these long-term management contracts with governments. So it's like 10 to 20-year contracts managing these parks. So that also makes a big difference in how park management is set up and run.
It's
But
incredible.
Yeah, I don't want to take over your talk. So
No, please.
I think maybe now is a good time to I don't know if you have more in your presentation on the bison, because that's something we need to talk about.
I can
As a,
make that one short.
yes, I think that is, you call it a keystone species, and I think that's the scientific term. But maybe you can explain a
Mhm.
little bit what that means and why. I mean, you said already what it does to the
Yeah,
landscape and how it's kind of brought back a lot of the ecosystem that has been depleted in a way. But yeah, maybe tell us
yeah.
more about why you love it so much.
So one of the things I tell people a lot is that bison are America's elephants in many, many different ways. So in terms of their behavior, the social structures, the family structures, the way that they serve the entire ecosystem, it's very similar to elephants. Um, and so kind of like you think of anything elephant, just kind of apply it to bison. So I don't have to go into that too much. But in terms of them being a keystone species, so one of the big things, there used to be 12 to 40 million bison in North America, which is a ton. Um, and they really helped keep the land healthy for a number of reasons. One of them is if you look at like their foot structure, so I love tracks, cows, the top two toes touch. And so for bison, it's a little offset.
Hmm.
And why that makes such a big difference is because as they walk through the dirt, they walk through the soil, they actually aerate it and till it. So they're actually helping to bring, like, put nutrients and air back into the soil so things can regrow. When they eat the little shoots, eat till something is a little shoot, and then they go and graze in a different area. And then they come back once it's grown a little bit. So they basically keep plants at such a level so they're not the plants aren't consuming so much water. So they help um, keep, I guess, moisture in the earth a little bit longer.
Hmm.
One of the reasons for the Dust Bowl back in the 1900s in the States was because there were no more bison left. And everybody's crops failed, and it was just a dry, dead environment because they took all the bison away from the Great Plains. Another thing is in winter, the snow gets, I don't know, 1.5 meters out here, 3 meters. It can be high in parts, and so the bison. I mean, they're pretty tall animals, and they're taller than I am. And so when they walk through the deep snow, they create trails for all these other animals in winter um, to get through, which is amazing. Also, their dung fertilizes the earth. There's seeds in there that birds come and eat. So they do a lot for the land. But the one issue that they face is that when were brought to the West, um, the the cattle transmitted a disease called brucellosis to the bison. Brucellosis causes animals to abort their fetuses, not their feces, to abort their fetuses, in like 3% of the animals who contract the disease.
Hmm.
And so again, and then now the cattle have been cured of that, but so elk and bison have brucellosis in some of their populations. And so a lot of ranchers who are around the parks don't want the bison to leave the park boundaries because they don't want their cattle getting brucellosis. So basically, the bison numbers are managed in Yellowstone a number of ways. And this is 20-year-old research. And the reason why it's relevant today is because this past year they finally brought back two new proposals to increase bison numbers in Yellowstone. And they, being democratic, they took votes on it. So we haven't heard what their results are, but hopefully they're increasing the numbers to the carrying capacity, which is about 8,000 animals. For the last 20 years, the numbers have been kept at about 4,500.
Wow. Okay. Hmm.
Yeah. And the way that those bison numbers are managed, well, also part of the argument, sorry, is that by allowing more numbers of bison, they're going to fill in the gaps throughout the park, these different areas. The park is 2.2 million acres. It's massive. So by allowing bison to fill in these gaps that aren't currently um,
Populated.
bison herds don't currently
Hmm.
go, yeah,
Hmm.
that the land will actually get healthier for the reasons that I stated before about it
Hmm.
being a keystone species. So that's the situation now. The way that the bison numbers are managed is that they're right outside the park boundaries in winter. So, like any animal, they've got their traditional migration routes. So, bison actually would go north of the park up to the Paradise Valley towards Bozeman, Livingston area, because it's lower elevation and there would be more food available for them. But they're not allowed to go any further because that's where ranchers are. So, there's a a ranch, like a slaughterhouse, basically, that collects the bison once they get over that park boundary, and then ships them out to different Native American reservations where the live animals are then processed and used for food and meat. Um, about 6 tribes, Native American tribes, get to come to this one kind of 1 mile stretch of land a few miles outside the park every winter and hunt and call and participate in their native traditions, um, and kill, a number of bison. And then there's a little bit of sport hunting, but they haven't needed to do too much of that. So there might be like 20 tags for bison or something. So that's currently how it's managed.
Okay, so if you go to Yellowstone, you will see them, even if it's just 4,500, not 80,000.
Oh, they're everywhere,
They're
especially the
everywhere.
main areas that you drive. And and they're in vast numbers, which is really exciting.
So how exciting is it to see them in winter? Because you've been a big advocate on doing photographic tours, especially in winter in Yellowstone. I know we have a question in the chat by Silke, who is asking what the best season is apart from the winter. But maybe just walk us through a year and like what does it change like? What is it like?
So for Yellowstone, it is the weather is so dramatic here and it changes so drastically throughout the year that everything has its little time and season in a way that I've really never seen anywhere else. And so, for example, when you ask what's the best time of year, it's what are you interested in is the best response I can give. So, for example, baby season, when you've got the bison babies, you've got the elk babies, the pronghorn babies, mountain goat babies, little squirrel babies, all the babies, bird babies, would be, let's see, June, I think is probably the best month for that. And it's adorable. It's so, so cute. And it's so fresh and flowers are starting to come. It's starting to get green again. I love autumn. I think fall here is absolutely beautiful, especially if you can time it when you get the aspens and the willows, and they're all these, cottonwoods and the aspens, they're all the orange colors. That would be, it depends on the rainfall. So September, October. The bison rut, which is going on right now, is one of the coolest things I've ever seen in my entire life. I dare say you could put it on par with the migration. I mean, it is grunting, it is dust, it is tension, smell, aggression. It is so fiery. It is one of the coolest things. And then the elk rut, which happens end of September, early October, is incredible. You hear the elk bugling. The males have their full, beautiful antlers. And you've got autumn, the bighorn rut. So you can tell I like the ruts.
You can come the whole year.
Yeah, you can. And that's every 6 weeks. It changes so much. The bighorn rut is really incredible. They're just neat animals and they're close. They're just kind of outside of town. So it's easy to spend time with them and they don't care about you at all. And then winter, I think, is the most beautiful and stunning for photography, especially for the bison. So can I present my bison photo now?
Yeah, please.
Is that okay?
Yes,
okay.
Let's reveal it. So drum roll, this year, Prince for Wildlife edition, free entry by Kate is going to be a bison in winter.
Oh, thank you. So this is not.
It's not loading anymore.
Oh yeah. So here's a wolf.
Also fine. We can't see it yet. You still have to share your screen, Kate.
Oh, duh. Okay, sorry. Hold
no
on.
worries.
I told you technology.
yeah. We're getting there.
Okay, perfect. Okay, now you can see my screen.
Yep. Yes, that looks good.
Okay, play from current slide. Okay, yeah. So wolf in Yellowstone. So this is the photo that I am gladly sharing with Prince for Wildlife this year. And thank you so much for wanting to showcase Yellowstone and winter and bison. It's really exciting for me. So what makes Yellowstone in the winter so special? So this is deep interior in Yellowstone. I had to hire, it's a private tour that we do, a multi-day tour to basically go find bison in the winter in the deep park. So we stay in West Yellowstone. We hire private snow coaches, these old bombardiers, which are really fun, to go through the park to find bison near the geothermal features. Because what happens is, like I said, it's well below freezing here. And in winter, in order to stay warm, the bison congregate by these geothermal features, which are blowing this hot steam. And when it's cold enough, the hot steam literally freezes instantaneously on each and every single hair of these bison in on the coldest days of the year. And also too, it's otherworldly, it's different. I don't think you can find bison in other places, but photographing them in Yellowstone in the winter in the interior with the geothermal is it's an otherworldly experience. And also it's beautiful. It looks like a snow globe. The trees are all perfectly white. You've got all this gorgeous negative space because of the snow, which creates a really clean image, which I really like. And it just looks kind of ancient and I don't know, maybe even a little apocalyptic with the smoke.
It
So
does. It
yes.
looks like a primordial scene somehow. It's very, very touching. And I think this is going to be one of the most sought after images of this edition. So I'm always telling people if they love a print, they should be quick and purchase it at the beginning of the campaign because they're all limited. It might sell out at some point. And I'm really thankful. We're all really thankful that you're donating this picture, Kate. So much appreciated.
Marion, honestly, it's an honor. The bison, I really say this, and it sounds funny, but they have given me so much. It's because of them that I came here. It's because of them that I'm living the life that I get to live now. I've gotten so many opportunities from photographing them through guiding people to photograph them. I have, I'm with the love of my life now. We've got this great home. We've got this great business. So I owe a lot to this species. So it's truly my honor. So thank you.
That's wonderful. That even raises kind of the emotional value of that picture. If it does, have such an impact on your life, that's incredible. We do have two more questions, and I think then we'll get to the end of our talk. So one is from Karl Heinz, who's asking which part of Yellowstone is the best to see, which is, I guess, a complicated question. Oh, I think we might have lost Kate at this stage. I don't know if you can still see her. Let's wait for a minute and see if she can rejoin us. Internet issues. I think I cannot jump into that question because I personally have never been to Yellowstone, so I would not dare and try and answer that. Here, she's back. She's back. No worries, Kate.
I was just so emotional. I just needed a moment. No, I somehow. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Sorry.
No worries. So I didn't try touching the question. So Karl Heinz wanted to know which part of Yellowstone is the best to see.
To see what?
Yeah, let's put the question back, Karl Heinz. Maybe. Yeah. So it's not as easy to answer, right? It depends on what kind of species you want to see, what kind of landscapes, if you want to photograph or not.
Yeah. Yeah, it really depends because again, it's such a big area and it's so different. For example, in autumn, my favorite place to go down into for my own photography is down into the Hayden Valley fishing bridge area, which is along Yellowstone Lake. Because that's at that point in October, it's cool enough where the grizzlies have come back down from the high elevations where they are right now because it's really hot down here and they wear huge fur coats. So I love going down there to try to photograph. The park's really quiet at that point. You might get some good color from the trees. There's great gray owls, which are so cool to watch and photograph, and the grizzly bears and geothermal stuff. So that's amazing.
Quite intriguing, yes.
Lamar Valley during the bison rut, because just the way the sun goes down behind the valley, you can get these, like, they're constantly rolling, peeing, and then rolling in the dust to get this big dust plume to be like, look how big my dust plume is. Come, hook up with me, lady. And so, and it gets backlit behind the sunset, and you can create just some really stunning imagery there. Winter, I mean, the interior, if you can get there, it's very special. Yeah.
But not on a self-drive or a day trip, if I understood you correctly. You need like a guided multi-day tour to access.
Yeah, you could do a guided day tour. It doesn't have to just be multi-day, but you do need to take a snow coach or do a snowmobile tour. I personally like hiring private snow coaches for me and my clients because I want to do what I want to do. And I want to do what my eye likes versus what the guide wants to show us or what, 8 other of your new friends want to see. So
Gotcha.
It's worth it to me. Yeah.
That sounds very nice. So I think at this point, it's good to mention your company. It's called All Things Wild Tours. So you
Yes.
do offer these photographic tours together with your boyfriend, you said, so might be
Yes.
worth checking out if you're interested in visiting Yellowstone and seeing all these incredible scenes you just described. Sounds very, very intriguing.
It's special. Yeah.
And then we have one last question from Mitch, who says I hope it's Mitch. He's a tracker
Hmm.
and he loves tracks and signs. So what would be signs you look for to find bison?
Yeah, I love sign. I love track. um, well, I'm gonna be straight up with you. You don't really need to look for track or sign. There's so many of them that you just see that big fuzzy brown animal.
That's
Um,
simple.
Wolves are different. Wolves, it's really fun to look for wolf tracks. And you get, especially in this, you can't see any tracks here except in the winter because the asphalt roads, and then the dirt is just so compact and there's tall grass. But in winter, that's when tracks come alive, and that's when it's really fun.
That sounds like a very good end to the talk, because that
Yeah.
says everyone come to Yellowstone in winter. Join Kate on one of her photographic tours. In the
Yeah.
meantime, yeah, we are excited to launch Prince for Wildlife rather soonish. Please stay tuned. We will soon release our launch date. There will also be a photo catalog, so a print catalog this year, where you can see all the prints ahead of the launch. So you can already, mark those that are interesting to you, make a little cross where Kate's Bison is in the catalog. Now we have a few more minutes if you want. If there's any more questions, now is the time. Other than that, I will say, Kate, do you have any last words that you want to share? Anything we didn't get to that's still important to you?
No, I just really thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring so much about wildlife. And if there's anything I can do to help you or advise you, I'm always open. Find me on Instagram or whatever at Kate Ochsman. Ask me questions and I will respond. Maybe with a voice message because I ramble. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Kate. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. There will be more live talks in this series, Prince for Wildlife Photographer Spotlight. So stay tuned. Check out the announcements on Instagram. The next one is going to be with Andrew Averly, so you can still sign up to that one. And other than that, I wish you a very pleasant evening, afternoon, and day wherever you are in the world. Thank you again, Kate, for your time, and
Thank you,
all the
everyone.
best.
Thanks, Marion. Thank you for
Bye
including me again.
bye. Thank you.